It's all the payload Ray has. Die!
Everybody down!
Metal Gear Solid 2 blurred the line between fiction and reality, and maybe even predicted the world we live in today. It asked questions we weren't ready to answer in 2001 about control and censorship, about the spread of information and who decides what's true. This wasn't just a sequel, it was a statement. And I don't think anyone was ready for it. And maybe we never will be.
She is Lady Luck.
This isn't just a review or a lore recap. We're unpacking what the story really means and why it still matters.
Daughter of a proud and noble soldier.
So we open this up in summer of 2007. There's a disguised oil tanker called the USS Discovery, and it's moving through New York Harbor. Officially, it's just another transport run. But underneath that deck, there's something being hidden, something the world's not supposed to see. And Snake's mission is to make sure it does see it. By this point, Snake and Otacon have already gone full rogue. They've started an NGO called Philanthropy. It's dead set on exposing Metal Gear tech to the world. And there's a tip that comes in from Otacon's stepsister, Emma Emmerich. There's a new model of Metal Gear, and it's codenamed Ray. It's being secretly transported by the Marines, right under the public. And then Snake jumps into action. He literally does. He bungee drops from the George Washington Bridge, landing on the tanker in the middle of a storm. His stealth camo breaks on the impact, though, leaving him completely exposed from that jump. But since Solid Snake is Solid Snake, he just kind of shrugs it off because he didn't even need it. The mission's pretty straightforward. Snake just needs to infiltrate the ship, photograph Metal Gear Ray, and get out. If he can leak these photographs to the public, then they can expose the entire operation. But since this is Metal Gear, you know nothing goes as planned. Snake barely starts moving before the ship is taken over by a group of Russian mercenaries, and they're led by an unknown man. They just silently kill all the Marines that they can find on the deck. As Snake watches this unfold, he's piecing together what's happening in real time, and then he keeps going. He sneaks toward the bridge and finds the ship's heading. It's not subtle. There's 500 miles past Bermuda, way outside of any official jurisdiction. Otacon figures it out instantly. There isn't a transport test. Metal Gear Ray is already combat ready, and the Marines are just planning to deploy it alone, without any Navy oversight. Snake heads deeper into the ship, but before he gets far, he runs into Olga Gorlokovich, daughter of the mercenary leader. She's pregnant, but she still refuses to leave. She's here to fight, and Snake has no choice but to engage her.
New York, I mean.
They fight each other in the middle of the ship, and after a tense battle, Snake knocks her out, using some non-lethal rounds. But he's not in the clear yet. Right after, a Cypher UAV drone locks onto him and takes his picture. Now he's officially known. Otacon radios in. The mercenary leader is Sergei Gorlokovich, Olga's father. Former Spetsnaz, Russian nationalist, trying to revive the old empire, and apparently, he wants Ray for himself.
Why are you here? We thought you were with the Colonel. What the?
Snake keeps moving and makes it to the cargo hold. Inside, Marine Commandant Scott Dolph is giving a passionate speech to his troops. He's talking about Metal Gear Ray like it's the future of military defense, completely unaware his ship's already been hijacked. Snake sneaks through the hold completely undetected, capturing photos of the Ray from different angles. Once done, he uses a secure terminal to transmit the images to Otacon, but then everything just completely falls apart. Revolver Ocelot appears, and just as before, he's calm, grinning, always one step ahead it seems. He's been working with Sergei the whole time. Sergei thinks they're going to sell Ray to Russia, bring power back to their homeland. But Ocelot has other plans. He double-crosses everyone. Ocelot shoots Sergei, then kills Commandant Dolph and several of Sergei's men. It's not about Russia. It's not about Solidus. It's about the Patriots. But then something even stranger happens. Ocelot's arm starts spasming. And just like that, his voice changes. His posture also. He starts talking like someone else. Liquid Snake. It turns out Ocelot had Liquid's arm grafted onto his body after the Shadow Moses incident, and somehow Liquid's mind is still alive inside that arm. Liquid taunts Snake, saying he avoided aging living on through the transplant. Then he boards Metal Gear Ray and blows the entire ship completely up. Snake barely survives. He fakes his death by swapping in Liquid's old corpse as a decoy. The world believes he died on that tanker. The media spins it. Solid Snake hijacked a marine vessel, sank it, killed everyone on board, including himself. And just like that, Snake became the villain of the story. He had no control over it. But meanwhile, the Patriots moved forward with their true plan, using the cleanup as cover to begin building an arsenal gear. This real war hasn't even started yet.
No problems. Proceeding as planned, sir.
Just real quick, if you've made it this far and you're into what we're building here, consider dropping a sub. These deep dives take a ton of time, and I'm doing them because these games matter. You know, every click and sub, they all go towards this series and the channel. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Let's get back into it. 2 years after that tanker went under, with Solid Snake framed from the attack and declared dead, the world had mostly moved on. But underneath that official story, something new was taking shape. The government said thousands of gallons of crude oil had spilled into the Hudson, so they built this massive offshore decontamination plant called the Big Shell. On paper, it was there to contain the mess, and in truth, it was just a smokescreen. On April 29, 2009, it became ground zero for something much, much bigger. A terrorist group calling themselves the Sons of Liberty seized control of the Big Shell. During what was supposed to be a routine inspection, they took hostages, including the current U.S. President James Johnson, and demanded $30 billion, threatening to ignite the entire facility if their demands weren't met. The explosion wouldn't just torch the oil, it would release enough dioxins to poison the entire ecosystem of Manhattan Bay. Making things even more insane, the group was being led by Solid Snake himself, or so it seemed. Foxhound responded with a new operative codenamed Snake, but once the boots hit the water, the name changed. The man we're actually playing as is Raiden, a new recruit, dropped straight into the fire. His mission was pretty clear: rescue the president and neutralize all the terrorists. While Navy SEALs took the aerial route, Raiden approached from below, diving in. But almost immediately something felt off. There was a fresh hole cut in the oil fence. Someone else had already made it through before him. After slipping into the deep-sea dock of Strut A, Raiden radioed his commander, referred to simply as the Colonel. The Colonel seemed thrown off. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else down here, but he ordered Raiden to proceed and reminded him of the stealth functions in his new skull suit. He moved forward to access a nearby node terminal, syncing up with the facility's internal systems and unlocking the Soliton radar. It's also here that the mission got a lot more personal. The Colonel casually dropped that Raiden's girlfriend, Rosemary, would be acting as his analyst. Raiden was not happy, but he agreed to let her assist, as long as she stayed in her lane. Rose made it clear she would only follow orders if they directly related to her role. The mission came first. Now with the mission in full swing, Raiden was ordered to move towards Strut B. Intel from the colonel suggested that Alpha Team, one half of SEAL Team 10, had reached the president's location. It looked like the operation might wrap up pretty cleanly, but again, this is Metal Gear. Nothing ever goes that way. Just as Raiden approached the AB connecting bridge, a radio transmission from Alpha Team cut through, intercepted and scrambled by the colonel. They found the president, but before they could move him, something attacked. The message just cut out in static. There's no response, it was just silence. Raiden then pushed forward to investigate, sneaking into the new Transformer room of Strep B. But what he found was pretty nightmarish. There was bodies of Alpha Team all over the place. They're torn apart. No sign of the president, just blood everywhere, and a real deep sinking feeling. And that's when he showed up. The thing that killed these people were still here. He was waiting. He was a pale, impossibly fast figure who moved like no one Raiden had ever seen. He could even walk on water. He dodged bullets and seemed to feed on violence. And this is our introduction to Vamp, one of the top members of Dead Cell, and unlike anything Raiden was trained to face. If it wasn't for a last-second intervention, that would have been it. But out of nowhere, a surviving member of SEAL Team 10 stepped in. He was calm, experienced, and precise. He identified himself as Pliskin. The name didn't mean much to Raiden at the time, but I think we all know this guy's seen a lot more than he's letting on. Pliskin filled Raiden in. He explained what Dead Cell used to be, how they were once a celebrated anti-terror unit, before falling into chaos. And he told Raiden the little he knew about Vamp, how he got his name, not just from his bloodlust, but because he supposedly drank the blood and survived being impaled. It sounded like nonsense. But Raiden had just seen the man dodge bullets and disappear into the dark, and the logic of everything here was already starting to break.
Raiden, what's going on?
The Alpha Team from Navy SEAL 10 is dead. No, a single survivor.
The kid's wired with nanomachines.
Pliskin handed Raiden a SOCOM and confirmed something odd. He knew Raiden was Foxhound, but he also mentioned that the unit had been disbanded years ago. That tiny line there, it doesn't seem like much yet, but it's the first crack in reality that's going to keep unraveling. And with that, Raiden pushed deeper into the facility. His mission's intact, but nothing about it feels right anymore.
Freeze!
Don't shoot.
Raiden made it to the BC bridge just in time to see Bravo Team catch up to one of the key figures behind the entire Big Shell siege, Fortune, the leader of Dead Cell. Bravo Team surrounded her, weapons drawn, their orders were clear. But what happened next shouldn't have been possible. They opened fire, and not a single bullet landed. It was like they curved mid-air, refusing to hit her. The SEALs were armed and trained, but whatever force was protecting her made them look powerless. To them, she was untouchable, and Raiden, ordered to stay out of sight, had no choice but to watch it all unfold. Fortune raised her massive railgun, the kind of weapon that shouldn't even be possible to be carried by a human, and obliterated the bridge. Bravo Team didn't stand a chance. The entire squad was wiped out, just like Alpha Team before. And then Vamp joined her again, and together they dragged the president and the nuclear briefcase, the football, into the Shell 1 core. Another opportunity to stop this whole thing was gone in an instant. And then the real punch in the gut came. The colonel called in, explaining that both SEAL helicopters had just been taken out by a Harrier jet. That entire SEAL assault. It wasn't a rescue mission, it was a distraction, just a smokescreen to get Raiden inside. There's no backup, no extraction plan, it's just Raiden now.
Colonel, SEAL Team 10's Bravo Team was wiped out.
I see.
What happened to the cargo choppers?
And now a new priority. Explosives have been planted across the entire facility. Raiden was ordered to rendezvous with two allies in Strut C, the bomb disposal expert Peter Stillman, and once again, Pliskin. Stillman filled in the blanks. He wasn't just any disposal tech. He trained Fatman, the madman behind the bombs. In fact, Fatman had been his best student. Stillman also revealed that a facility engineer had secretly escorted him in, helping SEAL Team 10 bypass security. The man clearly had history here, and deeper ties to the facility's layout. With Stillman nursing a leg injury and unable to move far, the team split up. Stillman stayed behind while Raiden and Pliskin spread out to disarm the bombs. Shell 1 and Shell 2. And it was going well, kinda too well. Once the last of the baby bombs were disarmed, Stillman radioed in bad news. The bombs they just defused were decoys, meant to trick them into thinking they succeeded. The real explosives were deeper, hidden in the lower levels of Strat A and H, big enough to level the entire big shell. And worse, the act of disarming the decoys had activated the real ones. Raiden raced to Strat A and managed to disarm the first, but by the time Stillman made his way to Strat H, it was too late. The explosion took his life. Another person gone, another deception revealed, and the mission kept just getting darker. As Raiden turned to leave, Fortune appeared again. She was surprised. She'd been expecting someone else. But she didn't hesitate. Once again, she opened fire with her railgun, destroying the area around Raiden. Her presence wasn't supernatural, it felt more like a curse. Raiden couldn't hurt her. He couldn't even slow her down. All he could do was just avoid her attacks. Then a new call came in from the Colonel. Fatman had issued a direct challenge. Raiden had to reach the heliport on Strut E, or another bomb would detonate. One that could destroy everything. Time was running out. And then Vamp arrived, warning Fortune that Fatman had betrayed them. And in the chaos, Raiden took a shot. The bullets once again curved away from Fortune, but not from Vamp. 2 shots landed, clean. One to the chest and one straight to the head. Vamp dropped, and for a moment, it looked like Raiden had done the impossible. Fortune cradled him. She was visibly broken, mourning the one person she could never follow into death. Raiden didn't stick around, but just before the scene faded, Vamp's body moved. He wasn't dead, not even close.
There's no need for sorrow, Queen. I died once already.
The clock was already ticking by the time Raiden made it to the heliport. He found the next explosive and disarmed it, just in time to come face to face with the man behind the chaos himself, Fatman. But unlike Fortune and Vamp, Fatman wasn't fighting for a cause. He didn't even seem to know or care about the Sons of Liberty's supposed demands. No, this guy was in it for the legacy. He wanted to outshine his mentor, Peter Stillman, by going down in history as the most notorious bomber of all time. This was his entire goal. Pure ego wrapped in carnage. What followed wasn't just a fight. It was a twisted game. Fatman zipped around in the battlefield on rollerblades, planting bombs mid-fight, while mocking Raiden the whole time. Raiden had to juggle dodging gunfire, tracking bombs, and disarming them fast enough to avoid a full-scale meltdown. In the end, Raiden held his ground. Fatman collapsed, but not before one last taunt, saying Raiden hadn't found the biggest bomb in the place. Sure enough, it was buried beneath Fatman's body. Raiden found and disarmed that final explosive. With the bomb threat over, for now, the Colonel reminded Raiden that the President was still unaccounted for. But this wasn't the end of the twist. Pliskin appeared and told Raiden the only way to extract the hostages would be by air. Before Raiden could even move forward, though, he was stopped cold by something unexpected. A sword-wielding cyborg ninja.
You passed with flying colors.
Identify yourself.
Unlike you, I have no name.
The thing, this soldier, was fast, cryptic, and immediately suspicious. The ninja dropped a new name, Richard Ames, a Secret Service agent who knew the President's location. He was being held inside Shell 1, and Raiden would need to disguise himself to blend in with enemy troops to get close. But even that wasn't going to be simple, because the ninja had laid out 3 obstacles. First, the elevator to the core had a camera, and Raiden would have to fully disguise himself in a BDU uniform to pass it. Second, Ames could only be identified by the sound of his pacemaker. Raiden would need to use directional audio to pick up his heartbeat in a room full of other hostages. And third, the door to the hostage room was rigged with biometric security. Raiden would have to coerce a guard into triggering that scanner. But even all that wasn't the biggest bombshell. The ninja told Raiden something that redefined the entire mission. The terrorists weren't the ones who brought a nuke to the big shell. The nuke was already there. Because the big shell wasn't just a decontamination plant, it was a cover, a front. And buried beneath it all was a new Metal Gear. And just like that, the mission completely changed.
Especially with that intruder still at large. Yes, the man in the sneaking suit. You know more about those suits than I do. But Foxhound was disbanded 4 years ago, so it must be the Patriots.
Inside the Shell 1 core, Raiden finally found Richard Ames, the agent the cyborg ninja had pointed him toward. But their meeting wasn't exactly what Raiden expected. Ames quickly revealed that they were both working under the same shadowy organization, hinting that Raiden's mission was never truly independent. Ames spilled the truth. The tanker explosion 2 years ago, it was no accident, it was staged. And the big shell, it wasn't a cleanup facility at all, it was a disguise. Built for one reason, to construct and house a new Metal Gear. Ames claimed the president was being held in the Shell 2 core, and dropped another bombshell. His own biometric data was being used as a failsafe key to activate the weapon. That meant he had to be cooperating, willingly or not. But before Raiden could ask more, things escalated pretty quickly. Ocelot entered the room, accompanied by someone who looked kind of like Solid Snake. Raiden used his directional mic to eavesdrop and heard something chilling. They were talking about Outer Heaven, the same militarized world order Big Boss once tried to build.
Have his background rechecked, just in case. You think he was working for them? We can't discount the possibility, especially with that intruder still at large.
When Raiden brought up the 30 billion ransom, Ames shut it down. There was never any ransom. That part was just smoke and mirrors. The real goal was to launch a nuclear warhead high above Manhattan, triggering an EMP that would cripple the city and liberate it. Ocelot confirmed that Ames was never here to help the president. He was here to spy on him. But before Ames could say anything else, he clutched his chest and died of a sudden heart attack. Before Raiden could be captured, the cyborg ninja appeared again, cutting a path for his escape.
But you died!
Leave this to me.
Raiden pushed forward towards the Shell 2 core, but on the connecting bridge, everything changed. The so-called Solid Snake from before reappeared, now openly claiming leadership of the terrorist group. But this time, the real Snake broke cover, from a Kasatka chopper. He fired at the imposter, revealing himself as the true Solid Snake.
What a pleasant surprise, brother. Save it. You're no brother of mine. Don't say you've forgotten me, Snake. Right, take cover.
The fake Snake, wearing a powered exoskeleton, dodged the blast and leapt into a Harrier jet piloted by Vamp. Raiden was handed a Stinger launcher and given a simple order: shoot it down. The resulting battle shredded parts of the big shell. The Harrier eventually went down, but it didn't crash. It was caught mid-air by something massive, Metal Gear Ray, the same model stolen from the Marines 2 years ago. Ray fired missiles into the air, blowing apart what was left of the shell and forcing Snake's chopper to crash land. Then it vanished beneath the waves, taking the Harrier and the imposter with it. In the aftermath, Snake called Raiden directly. It was time for the truth, at least as much as Raiden was going to get. Snake explained that he and Otacon, the Kasatka's pilot, and his longtime ally, were working as part of Philanthropy, an anti-Metal Gear organization. Otacon had saved Snake during the tanker incident by faking his death using Liquid Snake's corpse. They were here to stop the launch, and Otacon had an extra reason. His sister Emma was being held inside. Raiden, now convinced the terrorists had everything they needed to launch a nuke, began making his way towards the Shell 2 core, but the path was not easy. The bridge had been destroyed, forcing him to shimmy across a broken support beam while enemy troops were everywhere. After barely slipping into Shell 2, Raiden eavesdrops on a tense radio exchange between Olga and the terrorist leader. She didn't seem very happy. Olga had her own reasons for being here, and unfinished business with Snake. She made it clear she and her men were only here temporarily, and planned to leave for Russia once it was over.
Then screw your plan. I've been waiting for this day for 2 years, and I will send him to the bottom of the ocean.
To block access to the president's holding area, Olga activated an electrified catwalk. Raiden had no choice but to dive into a flooded lower level of the shell, hunting for a Nikita missile launcher. And after he secured it, he remotely destroyed the control panel and disabled the electricity, opening the path to the president. Raiden finally reached the president, but the first thing Johnson did was assume Raiden was there to kill him.
President Johnson.
Once the confusion settled, the real truth came out. Johnson dropped the biggest reveal so far. America wasn't really being run by its elected leaders. The country, maybe even the entire world, was under the thumb of a secret group called the Patriots. Not even the president knew who they were. All he knew was they operated through a group called the Wiseman Committee. 12 figures who made every major decision in the background, including who the next president would be. Johnson didn't just throw Raiden into a conspiracy territory. He detonated the entire thing. The man leading the terrorist wasn't just a rogue agent or some radical. It was George Sears, the 43rd president, Johnson's predecessor, and his real name is Solid as Snake, another clone of Big Boss. Just like Solid Snake and Liquid Snake, created as part of the Les Enfants Terribles project. Solidus had been behind the Shadow Moses incident back in 2005. But after it all went down, the Patriots stripped him of power. Now he was fighting back, not for the people, but to destroy the system that betrayed him.
Patriots' plans. What's more, Solidus decided on his own to send his most trusted man, Ocelot, to provoke Liquid Snake, bringing about the said incident. As a result, he succeeded in obtaining Rex and the data on the warhead. But in doing so, he ended up revealing the existence of both Rex and the Genome Army.
Meanwhile, Johnson admitted he had no plans to rebel. He just wanted to join the Patriots and become one of them. But now that he was of no more use, he was ready to die. And this gets mentioned again. Johnson confirmed that the big shell wasn't some environmental cleanup site. It was a shell. A distraction. The real structure hidden underneath it, like we've heard before, was Arsenal Gear. A massive underwater fortress that carried a small army of unmanned Metal Gear Rays and could launch nukes from anywhere in the world. But even that wasn't the scariest part. Arsenal Gear was built to control information, with an AI named GW at the helm. Its true job was to monitor, filter, and censor the digital world, emails, news, conversations, everything. If the Patriots had their way, they wouldn't just control governments. They would control the truth itself.
Right now, they feel pressured and threatened.
By what?
They fear an overabundance of digital information. The world will drown in the coming flood of information, and they along with it.
Before Johnson could say any more, he handed Raiden a disk, and on it was a worm, a program that could take down the GW. He begged Raiden to find Emma Emmerich, the AI's lead programmer, and get her to install it. Then things took a very dark turn. Johnson suddenly grabbed the Raiden's gun and tried to force him to pull the trigger, but Raiden hesitated. He couldn't do it, and before Johnson could finish the job himself, Revolver Ocelot walked in and did it for him. Right after, Snake contacted Raiden. He told him that he already knew that the big shell was a lie. There is no chemical weapons here. There never were. The whole dioxin threat was just a cover story. Snake also explained how the tanker incident was twisted by the Patriots to frame him, and how the Navy's Arsenal Gear clashed with the Marines' Metal Gear Ray project.
We'd hoped that by going public with photos of the
Decided to do a smear campaign.
I think the Patriots wanted to make an example of him so everybody would think twice before opposing them.
Now Raiden had a new mission, to find Emma. And on his way, Raiden ran into Vamp again. And somehow this guy was still alive. The two fought, and this time, Raiden managed to take him down. Before going under, Vamp revealed something else. Even without a nuke, they could still use Arsenal's hydrogen bomb to trigger an EMP blast big enough to knock Manhattan completely offline. He also claimed Dead Cell was never the original enemy. They were framed by the Patriots after the events 6 months ago. When Raiden finally located Emma, she didn't trust him at first. She thought he was one of the terrorists. But Raiden showed her the codec, nanomachines in his body, proving he wasn't one of them. So she agreed to help him. And then they took a moment to rest. Emma explained her role in all this, and she had helped build GW, thinking she was creating a program to fix the Y2K bug. But that was just another lie. She learned later that GW was designed to evolve, to judge, adapt, and filter information on a massive scale. It wasn't fully operational yet, but it was close. A major test was coming, very soon. One that would decide how much power the Patriots would really have.
What? Why did the president give it to you?
Huh?
Did something happen to the president?
After everything Emma had just been through, being captured, manipulated, and nearly drowned in the Patriots' lies, she still chose to help. The goal now was to get her back to Shell 1, so she could upload a virus to take down GW from the inside. But thanks to Metal Gear Ray's earlier missile strike, the direct bridge between shells were gone. Their only way across was a narrow oil fence. Emma wasn't trained for this, and she was terrified. But she kept going. Step by step, she made her way across, while Snake and Raiden provided cover from above, sniping down the guards and ciphers trying to stop her. She was just nearly there, and then he returned. Vamp. Somehow, he's alive again. Holding Emma at knife point, Raiden fired immediately, hitting Vamp and sending him into the ocean. But before he fell, he drove his blade into Emma's side, and she collapsed, bleeding and fading away quickly. Snake rushed to her, clearing the rest of the path and taking her to Shell 1. Raiden followed. Emma, barely conscious, still managed to guide Otacon through the virus upload. Even while dying, she was trying to do her part. Emma and Otacon shared one final moment together. A conversation years overdue. She had always looked up to him, wanted to be near him, and he had spent all of his time avoiding her, haunted by shame and distance. But here, in these last breaths, they found each other. And then she was gone.
Emma? 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 Answer me!
The virus upload hadn't completed properly. GW wasn't down, not yet. The only option left was to go straight into Arsenal gear and take down Solidus and his men from the inside. It had to be a direct assault. Otacon, completely broken by Emma's death, didn't want to come. He felt like a burden, like he failed. But Snake stopped him, told him the truth. He was the only one who could still help the hostages. And that was the last time all three of them, Raiden, Snake, and Otacon, would be in the same room before everything went to hell.
Eliminate the enemy. That's your only option. Leave it to me.
With Otacon off to save the hostages, Snake turned to Raiden and muttered that they might need a little help breaking into Arsenal gear. Right on cue, the cyborg ninja showed up again, but this time, they took off the mask. It wasn't Gray Fox like we all thought. It was Olga. Before Raiden could do anything, she knocked him out. Raiden woke up completely exposed, strapped to a torture table. A similar one Snake was on the first game. Stripped of everything, his weapons, his gear, his dignity, Solidus, Snake, and Ocelot were standing over him, and what they revealed hit harder than any punch. Solidus wasn't just the enemy commander. He was the man who raised Raiden, not as a father, as a weapon. During the Librarian Civil War, Solidus had molded him into a killer, a child soldier, Jack the Ripper, the White Devil. Now Solidus stood there with an eye patch from the Harrier battle, looking more like Big Boss than ever. Ocelot even joked about it, but there really wasn't anything funny in the room, just ghosts. After Ocelot left, Olga returned. She told Raiden the truth. She was working for the Patriots. They had taken her child from her. If Raiden failed, they'd kill her baby. She had no choice but to help him. But even with her hands tied by the system, she still has enough left to set him free. Raiden stood there, just stunned. Everything he'd believed it was unraveling. And then came another blow. Rose called in again. She asked if what Solidus said was true, if Raiden had really been a killer since he was a child. He admitted it. Then when she confessed too, she had been assigned to him by the Patriots, not as a lover, but as a spy. She altered herself to fit his preference, built herself around his ideal image. But somewhere along that way, she fell in love for real. And right before the signal cut out, she dropped one last truth. Jack, I'm pregnant. Shaken and hollowed, furious even, Raiden kept moving. He fought his way through the hangar, where the mass-produced Metal Gear Ray units were stored, until he finally reunited with Snake. Snake apologized for the deception, said he had to use Raiden to get inside. It was the only way. And then they fought side by side, cutting through wave after wave of Arsenal elite soldiers, the Tengu. Meanwhile, Otacon uncovered something devastating. The Colonel Raiden had been talking to the entire mission. He wasn't real. He was an AI. A simulated personality cobbled together by the GW system from Raiden's memories. Instincts and ideals. His own mind had been turned against him. As Snake moved ahead, he ran into Fortune, who was still convinced he killed her father. She held him at gunpoint, vowing revenge. Raiden climbed a ladder to the upper deck and found himself on a massive platform, alone again. Solidus was waiting. He revealed the final manipulation, the S3 plan, the Solid Snake simulation. The entire mission, every beat and every step, it was a setup. An attempt to recreate the Shadow Moses incident using Raiden as the new test subject. The goal was to create a new generation of perfect soldiers, not through loyalty or cause, but through conditioning, through digital ghosts. Raiden was never meant to think, just obey. Then came the onslaught. Dozens of Metal Gear Ray units were unleashed on him, alone and armed with only a stinger. He brought down several, but there were too many. Eventually, his strength gave out. He dropped to his knees, surrounded. Solidus stepped forward to end it himself, but Olga stepped in again. One last time, she threw herself between them, choosing to die so that her child might live. Solidus gunned her down. Emma's worm finally kicked in. GW started to collapse. The system was breaking. Orders stopped, and the rays shut down. Solidus, furious, destroyed them all himself, his dream of control slipping away. As Snake was dragged in, handcuffed and defeated by Fortune, Raiden collapsed again, fading out just as the final act begins.
Planning to hijack Arsenal?
Raiden came to on top of the deck of the Arsenal gear. His head still reeling, his body's beaten. This was April 30th. Standing around him was Solid as Snake, Fortune, Revolver, and Solid Snake, still cuffed, still alive. But Solidus finally laid his cards on the table. He wasn't here to nuke Manhattan or play terrorist. What he really wanted was buried inside GW. The true names and locations of the Patriots. If he could dig out their identities, he'd wipe them off the face of the earth. There's no more control, no more lies, just freedom, real brutal freedom. But it wasn't that simple. Fortune and Dead Cell, people who thought they were part of his cause, had different orders. They were steering Arsenal towards mass destruction. Instead of a blackout, they were aiming for a bomb, a real one. Something that would level Manhattan and send the world a message that nobody could ignore. And that's when Ocelot stepped in. He let the mask drop. The whole thing, the big shell, the mission, the betrayals, and even Dead Cell's role. It was all just a script. A sequel to Shadow Moses, written by the Patriots to test Raiden. Shape him, create the perfect weapon, the perfect legacy, and just another simulation. Ocelot had explained how they'd manipulated everyone. Solidus, Fortune, Dead Cell, all of them were just pieces on a board. The only thing the Patriots hadn't accounted for was Snake, the real one. That's why the AI colonel kept telling Raiden not to count on him. Snake wasn't part of the program. He was the glitch. Ocelot then turned his attention to Fortune. Said her so-called luck, her ability to dodge bullets and walk through explosions. That wasn't fate. It was tech. Patriot interference, smoke and mirrors. And then he shot her. With Fortune collapsing, Ocelot climbed inside Metal Gear Ray, ready to finish what he started. But as he launched a missile barrage at the survivors, something unbelievable happened.
Everybody down!
Fortune, in her final moment, actually deflected the warheads. No tricks this time, no tech, just pure will. Ray's missiles exploded harmlessly in midair, sparing Raiden, Snake, and Solidus. And then came the possession. Ocelot's arm started twitching, violently, uncontrollably even. Liquid Snake, the fragment of his consciousness left behind in the arm grafted onto Ocelot's body, took control. And Liquid was done hiding. He announced that he was the one who leaked Arsenal Gear's intel to Snake. Not to stop the Patriots, but to draw Snake out, to settle his score. Now with Ocelot's knowledge and a fully operational Ray, Liquid planned to hunt down the Patriots himself. He set Arsenal on a collision course with Manhattan, jumped inside Ray, and vanished into the sea. And Snake, being never one to quit, broke out of his cuffs and dove in right after him. Raiden was left behind, on a fortress with no rudder, no allies, and no clue what was coming next. The world was spiraling at this point. With Liquid gone and Fortune dead, Arsenal Gear didn't stop. It slammed straight into Manhattan's southern tip. The buildings crumbled in chaos. Raiden and Solidus were thrown from the wreckage, landing hard on the rooftop of Federal Hall. It was here, at the feet of America's first president, that Solidus made his final stand. Breathing heavily, he laid out the truth. His war wasn't about greed or power. It was about legacy. He couldn't leave behind children, not in this traditional sense. But if he could burn the Patriots down to the ground, maybe history would remember him as the man who gave freedom back to the people. No more digital chains or invisible rulers. Just choice. But Raiden wasn't here to listen. Right then, the AI versions of Colonel and Rose came back online. The Patriot AI, using their voices, dropped one final twist on us. This entire mission wasn't about a solid Snake simulation at all. S3. It stood for Selection for Sanity. The Patriots believed that human culture, or ideas or memes, or shared knowledge, had become too chaotic, too full of noise. The internet, data, stories, memories, all of it was piling up with no filter, no structure. So the Patriots decided they would become the filter. They'd shape human history not by force, but by controlling what was remembered and what was forgotten. They said people weren't capable of facing hard truths, that would bury what matters under endless piles of junk information, that we needed them to clean it all up. And now, Raiden had to prove them right, or wrong. The AI ordered him to kill Solidus, not just to survive, but because his nanomachines were the key to locating the Patriots, Olga's child, Rosemary's life, and the future. They all hinged on this moment, and Solidus, he wasn't backing down either. He wanted Raiden to fight. He needed it. He even admitted it was him who killed Raiden's parents back in Liberia. All of this just to push Raiden to the edge. And it worked. Raiden stepped forward, blade drawn. The two men clashed in a brutal duel. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it was Raiden fighting to reclaim his identity, to carve out something of his own in a world that had treated him like a tool. In the end, Raiden was victorious. Solidus, his spine severed, he was bleeding out, dragged himself across the rooftop, inching toward the statue of George Washington. He reached up with a final breath, trying to touch a symbol of the freedom he could never claim, before collapsing. For Raiden, this wasn't a victory. It was a reckoning. Raiden stood outside Federal Hall, the chaos behind him finally quiet. There's no more gunfire, no more simulations, but a lot of questions. And in that silence, Snake stepped forward. He let Raiden in on one last secret. The virus disk they gave him, it was a dummy. A fake-out to protect the real plan from ever falling into the wrong hands. Snake and Otacon still had the real one, and they were already working on tracking down the Patriots. But Raiden wanted to go with him. He didn't want this to end yet. Snake just shook his head. You've got your own life to figure out, people to catch up with. And in a way, that hit harder than anything else. This whole thing may have been orchestrated, a test, a manipulation, but Snake told him something finally made it all click. What you felt, what you went through, that was real. They couldn't take that from him, not even the Patriots. Now it was up to Raiden to decide who he wanted to be, what he wanted to fight for, and what kind of legacy he'd leave behind. Then, just like that, Snake was gone. Off to chase ghosts in the dark. And as Raiden stood there in the heart of New York, unsure of what he could do next, Rose appeared. She hadn't been a lie, not all of it. Even though they'd both been manipulated, used, and dragged through hell, there was still something worth holding on to. Together they decided to move forward, to try to live, and to raise the child they now knew was on the way. Sometime later, Snake and Otacon ran a trace on the virus disk. It worked. They found the names of the Patriots, all 12. But there was just one problem. They were all dead. And they had been for over 100 years. Somehow, the Patriots were still pulling strings from beyond the grave. Or through something even more twisted than they imagined. That lead was fake, fed to them on purpose. The trail had gone cold again, but they weren't giving up. The fight wasn't over.
Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh.
Back in 2001, everyone thought we were buying Snake's next mission. That's what the trailer showed. That's what the box implied. That's what the marketing hammered into our head. Solid Snake back in action. What nobody expected was Raiden. No warning or build-up, just a hard cut. And suddenly you're playing as some rookie you've never seen before, with light hair, a high-pitched voice, and clean armor. People were pissed. And honestly, I get it. I was pissed. But the thing is, that wasn't just some last-minute switch. That was the whole point. Kojima didn't just lie in the story. He lied to everyone outside the game, too. He built the deception into the DNA of the entire experience. Because he wanted us to feel what Raiden felt. Off balance, lied to, controlled. And that discomfort, that confusion, that was the story. Right from the jump, Raiden was being pushed around by a voice in his ear, told what to do and what to feel. What matters, and at first, we're right there with him. Waiting for Snake to come back and fix everything. Waiting for the real game to start. But Snake was never the main character this time. We were. And Kojima knew it. He watched how we treated Raiden, how we ignored what he was going through, how we clung to the old ideas of who the hero should be. And then he dropped the hammer. This isn't about Snake. This is about you, the player, the follower, the subject. It was the whole world inside and outside the screen. A system designed to shape us, to control how we think, what we value, and what gets passed on. And in 2001, that felt like science fiction. In 2025, that feels like today. The idea that AI could decide what's worth remembering, that our digital lives are being sorted, filtered, reshaped. That's the truth that gets buried under the noise, all the memes and corporate algorithms. Kojima didn't just predict it. He called it out before it even started. And he used this game to tell us we were already inside the machine. And the wildest part is we missed it. So many people wrote this game off, said it was weird for the sake of being weird, said Raiden wasn't Snake, said the twist was too much. But if you go back now and really sit with it, the simulation, the data, the manipulation, the way the story crumbles under your feet while you're still trying to make sense of it, that's not a failure. That's design. It's a game that wants you confused, it wants you angry, because that's what wakes you up. And let's talk about Raiden. He got dragged for years. People called him soft, said he was just eye candy, said he didn't belong. But you know what? Raiden was the honest character in the whole game. He didn't choose this. He was raised in hell, molded by war, and dumped into a mission that lied to him from the first second. He spent the whole game trying to figure out who he was, and by the end, he finally stops being a puppet and stands on his own. And that matters, because for once, the hero wasn't some invincible legend. It was a broken kid, choosing to become something else. That's what Metal Gear Solid 2 is about. It's not Snake, it's not war, not even the Patriots. It's about control. It's about what stories we believe. It's about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's narrative, unless you fight your way out. And that's why this game is still important, because it saw what was coming, and it didn't flinch. And if y'all made it to the end of the video, you already know this wasn't just another recap. This was a message, a reminder, a wake-up call that still echoes today. And that's the whole reason of Jake's save room. Not just to tell you what happened, but to show you why it mattered, why it still matters. So when Snake tells Raiden to choose what he believes in, find something to believe in and find it for yourself. He's not just talking to him, he's talking to us. And if you all stuck it with me this far, I seriously appreciate you. You all know I don't make these to go viral, I make them because I care about them. And Metal Gear Solid 2 isn't just another cool stealth game or another cool sequel. It's a layered, risky, messy masterpiece that dared to lie to us, not to trick us. But to make us look closer. To ask better questions about information, about control, and about who we are, and who we pretend to be. Kojima didn't just tell a story here, he hijacked the audience's expectations and made the entire experience part of the message. That's not just smart, it's extremely gutsy. And looking back at it now, it might have been the most ahead of its time game that was ever made. So if this video helped you feel any of that, even just a piece of it, then we did what we set out to do. We're building something different here. It's not about chasing trends. It's not about feeding the algorithm. This is about preserving the games that meant something. The ones that left us asking questions. The ones that we remember. We call this place Jake's Safe Place because it's ours. Yours. Everyone who ever played something and felt it stick to their ribs. And if you feel that too, you're already part of this. We've got so much more coming, and we're only getting started. But until next time, I'll see y'all later.